Okay guys, today Alô Você is here at Thomas Griffin office in Center City, Philadelphia. Mr. Griffin is an attorney in immigration law for 16 years now. He's been taking care of hundreds of people in different cases for all these years. And right now he's taking care of a specific one of a Brazilian girl who is 24 years old and she's been here her whole life. Mr. Griffin, can you tell us a little bit more about her case?
Sure. Her name is Ludimila da Silva. She's been in the United States since she was 2 years old when her mom came here, brought her here on visitor visas with her 3 older siblings, 2 older sisters, and an older brother. And she's just been living here. She speaks perfect English. She's fully integrated into the community here, and went to high school in the United States. And she just got wrapped up with a couple of sort of bad actor men in her life. She was a victim of a sex crime when she was in high school. So she has a lot of trauma from a very young age. I think she was about 15 when she was attacked. And then she got involved, fell in love with a man who ended up having a baby with him, but who was extremely violent to her. And most recently she was married a few years, and they had one baby girl, and then they had a second. Then she got married to a man who was a soldier. They were living together in Fort Knox military base, and they had another child. And he had multiple sexual affairs, outside of the marriage, betrayed her many times and in various ways, and so she was stuck with 2 children and him not coming home and fooling around and a lot. So he never filed for her green card. He promised to file for her green card, which would have been a very simple process. She would have been fine. She would have been a citizen by now, in fact. But he never got around to it. He spent money on his own toys, video games, buying himself a motorcycle, and having multiple affairs, leaving her to raise the 2 girls by herself. She had seen at one point videos posted and cell phone messages from one of his many girlfriends that was very overtly sexual and saying, "I want you," and "Where are you, baby?" and things like that. And she confronted him on it, and he denied it. I think they were deployed together as soldiers, him and this woman, who he's having an affair with in Afghanistan or something, and she got all kinds of messages back from other soldiers that he was fooling around and while he was away. And then when they came back from Afghanistan, she confronted them both and confronted the woman, who's also a soldier, and basically, while she was really angry, while she saw her life falling apart, no green card, raising 2 kids by herself, trying to have a family that she never really had in a tight way, just falling apart, and she sort of exploded and she punched the woman in the nose. And that's it. It was a simple punch to the face, and since it was on a military base, she got prosecuted. And since it was a soldier, I guess the judge was really upset, and he sent her to prison for 18 months. And so she gave her kids here to one of her sisters living in Philadelphia. She did her time here at the Federal Detention Center in Philadelphia, and that's how I came to know her. So immigration gives a benefit to women like her who've been abused, and he was abusive in psychological ways, and he showed cruelty in other ways and physical ways towards her. So you can get a visa called under the VAWA program, the Violence Against Women Act.
Okay.
So instead of having a husband petition for you, you can file for your own green card if you can prove that you've been abused or a victim of cruelty or abuse at the hands of an American. So she filed for that, and it just got denied because they said you're not a good person because you punched someone in the nose. You have to have, it's very technical, but one of the elements of getting this green card based on the Violence Against Women Act is that you have good moral character, quote unquote. And basically the government had held that you don't have good moral character because you punch someone. But there's an exception in the law that says if the thing that you did that makes you bad, like the punch, is connected to the abuse, if you did it because you were abused, then you can be forgiven for it. So I had argued to the immigration judge who wants to deport her. I said, what we call but-for cause. I said she would not have punched that woman in the nose but for the fact that she was having an affair, or but for her husband was mistreating her by having public affairs and putting it on YouTube or wherever, on Facebook. And so I said she would not have punched her, so it's definitely connected to the abuse. And the judge just said, I don't find that it's connected.
Do you think there's anything to do because she's a soldier?
She is not a soldier. Her husband is a soldier.
Okay.
But the person she punched is a soldier. Well, I think that's why she got the long sentence she got. I think if you punch someone in the nose, for example, in Philadelphia, you don't even get prosecuted or arrested, or if you do, you maybe get probation. But she did it on a military base. It was Fort Knox, Kentucky. The federal judge, instead of being a little local case like we have in Philadelphia, it became a federal case. So where she was sentenced in court for a nose punch was not like a municipal court like you do here in Philadelphia. She was sentenced in a giant federal court in Kentucky, and before a big federal judge who wanted to send a message like, don't touch our soldiers or something. Meanwhile, the people with the true bad moral character are her husband, an American who could have taken care of the children and saved her and got her a green card, and the other person with bad moral character is this woman who's committing adultery. They're both committing adultery, or destroying this family, and leaving this woman who's an illegal immigrant with 2 kids and no connections. And so they're the real bad people, and that's what's so bad. She was just trying to hold the family together, and she expressed some anger really quickly. So that's sort of the terrible irony of the story. Her husband is such a coward, even though he's a soldier. He didn't go to court. He didn't go to federal court and say, Your Honor, it's my fault. I should be taking the blame. I was having sex outside of the marriage. I never got her a green card. I mistreated her. I never took care of the girls. She was like, I treated her like trash, and I want to be forgiven. He never stood up and took the blame throughout this whole process. He never went to her sentencing. He never tried to ask the judge to give a lighter sentence. He never helped me with my immigration work. He never came to immigration court and said it's all my fault. And all throughout this process, he could have filed a husband-wife petition for her and just ended this whole thing. He just let her out to dry, hang her out to dry. She's got 2 little kids, so she's basically on her way out. We lost the case. I'm trying to change it on appeal, but this kind of decision is almost impossible to change on appeal.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you think that there's basically nothing that you can do right now to save this woman who's been here her whole life, has been married to a citizen, and has 2 children that are Americans. Right.
She has 2 American. Not only does she have 2 American children, obviously 2 cute little girls, but there's no one to take care of them. This guy has done nothing, and the prior man violently abused her too. So they're out of her life. She has full custody of them, even though she's currently in immigration detention. Her sister has been taking care of them, but her sister has a lot of kids already, and she's got enough of her own responsibilities. So if Ludimila gets out, if we somehow get her released, she'll just go back and be a full-time single mom to these kids. But without that, they are in the hands of her sister, who's already overloaded. The fathers will not step up. So all I can do in terms of my law work is just file an appeal and try to go to a higher court, which is where I am at. But because of certain technicalities in the law, it's almost impossible. It's very close to impossible that I could ever win based on how the decision was made. So what I'm sort of doing is talking to people like you and getting the public to know about this case, how the tragedy of it, who the real bad people are and who the real good person is, and maybe send a message. The message, I guess, the best would be outside of the courtroom would be that the Brazilian consulate will refuse to issue travel papers to let her get back to Brazil. So at some point when the whole case is over, it's time for her to be deported. Department of Homeland Security, ICE, whatever, has to get permission from Brazil to have this person allowed to enter Brazil. Whenever there's a deportation, the U.S. government has to first ask permission of the receiving country if the person can come back. So that's at that point that the receiving country will do a review to see if the person really is, for example, Brazilian, whether she has the right to live there. But they can also refuse for humanitarian reasons to say, we're not going to let her into our country, you guys handle her. Her kids are there. It was an American soldier that caused her a problem. It's not our problem, and we're not going to allow you to break up a Brazilian family. We don't want to be party to breaking up a Brazilian family and to leave these two little girls on their own. So that's the power that the Brazilian community or the Brazilian consulate can actually come in, which is outside of court, to make this an important, see people, how important this is to hold this family together. And then as I got to know Ludimila, she has done more volunteer work and work for the poor and the homeless. I could go on forever, all the beautiful things she did, that she squeezed in while taking care of the two little girls by herself. She was always out at soup kitchen. She was always out gathering clothes for pregnant women of soldiers that were living on the base. She was always doing different things and holding events for birthdays. She's really like a super wonderful person who's done one bad thing in her life, which was punch her husband's mistress in the nose. And it's an old-fashioned American thing, but there's certain people we say, right, you should punch them in the nose. That's what they deserve, right? It's just like, stop it. So it's just, it's really sad that one sort of very emotional act of a person who'd been traumatized all her life by various men just lashed out for 1 second, and now her whole life is on the edge of changing forever.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, and I really hope we can get the word out there and try to help her in any case. There is a chance with the Brazilian consulate, so hopefully they will hear us.
Yeah, some of your listeners or viewers could contact the Brazilian consulate in New York and just say that your position is that the Brazilian government shouldn't issue these travel papers because it'll tear apart a family and re-victimize a woman that's already been a victim of so many men in her life and sort of the immigration system. That would be a great help.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're going to try to do. So while we're here, is there any difference between an immigrant and an American citizen when it comes to legal rights?
Oh yeah. For one thing, an American citizen can never be deported. So the Supreme Court has sort of recognized that deportation is a punishment itself. It's bigger than a jail sentence because it means banishment from the United States forever. Anyways, if you're born in the United States or you naturalize, become a citizen, you can never be deported no matter what you do. You can be a murderer and you can't be deported. So that's the main thing. So when an American, for example, punches someone in the face, they will go in front of a court and serve their time if they get a jail sentence, or they'll pay a fine, or be on probation, or have to go to an anger management class. A non-citizen would also go through that, but when they pop out of that system, then they go into the hands of immigration, and that's exactly what happened to Ludimila. So she was just like an American that maybe punched her husband's mistress in the nose, but when the American equivalent would just go home to her kids, she goes into another jail, immigration jail, where then they start to judge her about whether she's a good person or not, and whether she deserves to live in the United States anymore, and whether she was really abused enough to be able to be awarded a green card for being treated cruelly by an American. So that's the case I put on. But now she's been locked up for about 8 months in immigration jail. She wears a jumpsuit every day. She is behind bars. She's in a cage, and her two little girls are out, and all she ever did is punch someone that was ruining her family. So that's sort of what happens is if you have a shoplifting, if you have a green card and you shoplift, you'll pay your fine, but then you can be put into deportation. If you did it twice, even if you shoplifted for $50, you're in what we call mandatory detention. You can't even get out of immigration jail, and you'll be in there until they deport you. So immigrants always face more additional punishment for doing the same crime than American face. So that's an advantage or a right that Americans have, the protection against immigrants. So that's why I always encourage people, if you have a green card, don't just stop there, get your citizenship, be protected, or else, of course, always stay out of trouble. But sometimes you can't control that. And then it's even worse if you don't have it. So green cards are non-citizen, they're lawful permanent residents, they're not citizens. And then lesser than that, in terms of the eyes of the law, people without any documentation. And Ludimila was like that, so that's like 0 documents. So you have even fewer rights. It's harder to stay here. But her husband, and he could have cured it a long time ago just by simply filing a petition that I think cost $420, and he just never ever cared enough to take that step. So that's sort of the main thing. There's extra punishment for non-citizens. Every time you go through the system, they'll check out, if they can find out that you're not born in the United States or you're not a citizen, they'll put you through another check and let ICE or Department of Homeland Security know you're here. And then, especially under the Trump administration, they've been coming to get everybody that could possibly be deported. They've been pushing for deportation.
Okay.
There was a time, say, before Trump, like especially under President Obama, who, by the way, was very tough on immigration. He deported more people during his 8 years than any president had ever deported during his term. But he also had priorities, and he said, I want the most dangerous people out first. So drug dealers and people who commit violent crimes, pick them up. But if you just had smaller crimes, say simple assault, like what Ludimila did, or driving under the influence, or shoplifting, they just wouldn't be a priority. And then people who never committed any crimes, who were just here illegally, like let's say they came over the border, or they came in like Ludimila and overstayed their visa, zero priority for deportation. Let them stay here. They're not getting green cards, they're not getting benefits, it's hard to work, right? You don't get a social security number, you don't get a driver's license. But Obama was saying, we have resources, let's use them. We have limited resources, let's use them on people that are a danger to us. Trump, on the other hand, as anybody, because it's sort of a mean-spirited way of doing it. Say, well, you shouldn't be here anyways, and we'll rip you apart from your children, we'll rip you apart from your wife, we'll rip you apart from your husband, your community, we'll wreck your family. Watch. And he's doing it. So that's exactly where Ludmila falls.
Yeah, that's pretty sad and upsetting. Do you have anything to tell to the immigrants if they are stopped by the ICE? How should they proceed?
Sure. Generally, you don't have to talk to anyone, and you don't have to any law enforcement officers, and you can always ask for a lawyer. So if you're afraid, you can just sort of remain silent. You're not obligated to show your identification or to say whether you're a citizen or not. Police, the general police, like the Philadelphia police or state police, have no even right to check your immigration status. Okay. So that's not a question. It's not under their jurisdiction to enforce immigration laws. So let's say you're speeding, or even they accuse you of driving under the influence of alcohol. They can say, show me your license, show me your registration, that you're legally in a car and driving it. But they can't say what country you're from or show me your visa. Okay, it's just they don't enforce the laws about visas and coming and going from the country, so they shouldn't be asking that. But many of them do, and once they get to that point, then many of them they'll start to call ICE. We think we got a Mexican here or something like that, right? Or this person has an accent, so we think you might be interested. And at this point, under the Trump administration, they are taking an interest, whereas under Obama and before that, let the person go, it's not our business. Or we're too busy with more serious cases.
Yes.
But now every case is a serious case, unfortunately. And they're not, I think the big problem is they're not taking into consideration how long a person has been here, how deep their roots are here, and also how the community would suffer with that person not in it, especially if they're living children behind. Or they're taking American-born children and forcing them into poverty in a third world country, which is usually it. I mean, everyone knows most of the people that are in immigration jail or who get deported have brown skin. They do not look like me.
Yeah.
They do not look like Trump, right? So there's a lot of sort of racism all built in, and they come from countries that are poor, and so when they go back, they're not going back to places like France or Canada, right? They're going back to places like third world countries that are already troubled, and that's why they probably got out or can't go back. And then once you have children here, the roots start to develop, and it's just the punishment is sort of tripled and quadrupled the more people that get involved with it. So yeah, I would definitely say to people out there, if you could find a way to get legal, see an immigration lawyer and try to get your status legal. If you have a green card and you've had it for enough time, and that would be 5 years. If you're not married to an American, you can apply for citizenship. And if you've been married to an American for the last 3 years, you can apply for citizenship with just having a green card for 3 years. Things you have to be careful of: if you've ever been arrested before, every time you get a benefit from immigration or you ask for a benefit, they get your fingerprints. So they may ramp it up and see that before giving you a benefit, they may want to review your case. You could end up in immigration court, which is where a judge will where Department of Homeland Security will try to get you deported, and you needed a lawyer to try to defend against the deportation. And there's different ways to avoid deportation. Even if you did shoplift, even if you did punch someone in the nose, there's ways to be able to stay here by showing what we call equities, the reasons why the good stuff outweighs the bad stuff in their life. Or we can even sometimes say the crime that you committed is not the kind of crime that's in the law that allows the government to deport you. So there are crimes that don't involve, that don't trigger a deportation, but sometimes you need a lawyer to step in and show the judge that this isn't the right kind of crime.
Absolutely, and that's why we have all your information here on the bottom of the video for anybody that needs an immigration lawyer. Mr. Griffin's definitely ready to see you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Griffin.
Yeah, thank you.